operation. They don't even have jet fuel to get for airplanes to take off. They're clogging up their runway. But we're talking to Cuba right now, and Marco Rubio talking to Cuba right now, and they should absolutely make a deal because it's truly a humanitarian threat. We'll see how it all turns out, but Cuba and us, we are talking. In the meantime, there's an embargo, there's no oil, there's no money, there's no anything.
If a deal isn't made, would you consider an operation like the one in Venezuela?
I don't want to answer that. Why would I answer that? If I was, it wouldn't be a very tough operation, as you can figure. But I don't think that'll be necessary.
Muy crítica y cada día estamos de mal para peor, porque aquí esto es lo más inevitable que se ha visto en este país. Ya no hay combustible, no hay. Mira los hoteles todos vacíos. Ya el pueblo no vale un centavo para nadie. El cubano más de lo que ha aguantado, que si es por una mejoría, que venga lo que venga.
All of the big power plant ships that used to dock in Cuba, that used to burn fuel to make energy for Cuba, are gone. And now even the smaller ones are gone. And they're all leaving for non-payment. So when they tell you Cuba's economy is failing, every angle for them to get fuel is disappearing. They're also experiencing the norovirus right now. What we had months ago, they're having it really bad. There's no medicine. There's no hospitals. There's no air conditioning in a hot, humid island in the middle of the ocean. They're really going through it. Protesting is intensifying, and many are saying they can't wait till the administration in America takes over because they've seen what it's doing for Venezuela, and they're just hoping and praying that they get liberated as well. Super interesting that citizens would rather have America come in, even though if it happens, when it happens, we're going to probably hear from mainstream media that the citizens are not happy about it. But we're all going to know they're full of shit.
Cuba has fallen. That's the news that I am delivering to you today. It has been 15 days since the blockade had begun, where all oil for the oil-dependent nation has been blocked. And though the Cuban government has tried to ration that as long as they can, the fact is they've just timed out. They've ran out of oil. So what we're watching right now is a complete collapse of the Cuban national energy grid. There are pockets of generated power for military bases and bunkers, compounds like that don't help the people. For 95% of the population, over 11 million people are now without power, and that power is not coming back on. Our focus on this series has really been to highlight what's going on for the Cuban people as themselves, not just the melodrama that's playing between the Cuban government and the American administration. And over the past 15 days, the Cuban people have been living through what is essentially an apocalyptic scenario, but only kind of on the precipice. As of today, it goes full-blown apocalyptic in Cuba. We're no longer tracking blackout hours. We're now going to start tracking the survival metrics, water access, food spoilage, and of course, cholera outbreaks. This, of course, is because with the massive energy grid failing, sewage system sanitation processes have also shut down. So all throughout the country, there is sewage overflowing on the streets. That means that disease is essentially spreading. With no available clean water to 90% of the population right now, that means that the only sources of water that they have, especially without the ability to purify that water or boil it, what you're going to see is massive waves of disease hit over the next couple weeks, because these take time to incubate. It's going to run through the population of 11 million people in a country 90 miles south of Florida. Now, there was an announcement by the Russians 2 days ago that they were going to be sending humanitarian aid in the form of fuel to Cuba, but yesterday, Russian state-flagged tanker Academic Passion declaring its cargo humanitarian fuel was actually stopped 12 miles outside of Cuba and boarded by U.S. forces. So as far as anyone breaking the blockade, it looks like there is a kinetic stalemate that's happening right now. But what does that tell the Cuban people is that there's no help coming, there's no oil coming. But because yesterday of a massive fire in the most important oil refinery in Havana, even if oil did come in at this point, say a negotiation was made between the Trump administration and the Castro government in Cuba, the fact is there'd be no way to process any kind of oil. So there's nothing that the people of Cuba can do right now. They've been reliant on a failing infrastructure for too long, and now that it's shut down and the only way to process oil for fuel, at least the fuel that people use, there's no way out of this. There's no way out of this. State-run internet and cell service has essentially gone down. The only way of having any kind of communication in Cuba right now is through amateur ham radio operators and whoever was able to smuggle in satellite phones before the blockade actually happened. Now, the U.S. victory of enforcing this blockade has really come at a massive diplomatic cost at a time where diplomatic tensions across the world right now are incredibly fractured. The only support from another nation that the U.S. has had on its actions in Cuba has been Israel. And with Cuba looking like it's going to be America's Gaza in the Western Hemisphere, I doubt there's going to be any support coming from anyone else. Now, the UK has remained silent, but France and Spain have issued statements stating their grave concern. But the UN Security Council meeting is calling to contemn the U.S. actions because it's leading to a mass starvation of people. Now, be assured that if that's what this leads to, which it most assuredly will at this point, because even if you bring in food, there's no way to cook it. Even if you bring in oil, there's no way to process it. This would be the largest humanitarian crisis that is now happening here in living history on the Western Hemisphere. And it's caused by the American government, the American military, and the Western alliance is completely fracturing over the morality of this siege. So to summarize this all kind of on day 15, the countdown is officially over. The national energy grid is down. The island of Cuba has gone dark. The escape routes are closed, and the superpowers are in a kinetic standoff at sea. This is not a good place for the Cuban people to be, and there is essentially nothing going on American mainstream media when it comes to coverage of this. And I think that that's on purpose. It was easy to seal off Cuba. And it's easy to make sure that nothing's coming out of Cuba. And you are seeing videos all throughout Latin America, all throughout Central and South America about what's going on in Cuba. It's just not in America. You're seeing it in Canada, not in America. This is a media blackout that's being done by our mainstream media. The only voices that are talking about what's happening in Cuba to the Cuban people. They don't care about the government. I don't care about whether they're communists, anything like that. I care about people and the fact that we, as Americans, by our silence, are condoning 11 million people being thrown into an apocalyptic scenario where they're deprived of food, of water, of health care, where children are becoming casualties, where the elderly are becoming casualties, anyone with chronic illness are becoming casualties, and soon the young and the healthy will also become casualties as disease runs through the population, as the lack of clean water or the absence of water altogether throws the people into absolute shock and a state of survival. Now, the hope from the U.S. administration is that this kind of pressure that was put on the people would force the population's hand to confront the government. But the fact is the people have been thrown into a state of survival almost immediately. That's how fragile the Cuban system actually was.